Hey you guys, this is Mike and Natalie here, and we want to give you a little rundown about what's going on before we hop on the podcast with Call Her NASA today.
So, big picture, what's going on here at JPL is we have a lot of engineers gearing up for retirement. We want to make sure that when they leave, our new hires are able to produce good work. We're really wanting to transfer that knowledge down to the younger employees with knowledge management systems.
We've got some good knowledge management systems in place, but access is an issue, and some of the information is really esoteric, so it's tough to get to the reasoning and the why behind some of this.
Yeah, we're also dealing with the build to print mandate, where we can rescue some of our past work and build on those successes. We can save a lot of money, but risk engineers getting bored and wanting to leave work somewhere they can start projects from scratch.
Some of these problems are being seen everywhere, not just in our industry. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has documented massive growth, more than 100%, in workers age 65 and older, and the declining birth rate isn't helping us backfill those jobs and some of those skills.
You'll now hear about some of our training programs such as the ROVE program and Project Phaeton. Both are designed to get our new hires up to speed, but they take different approaches. ROVE is a smaller project where new hires can build an educational rover that fully functions. The Phaeton project had early career hires work on slightly larger missions that were actually planned to go to space. Phaeton was a lot more expensive per person, but did provide lots of knowledge for future applications. ROVE was cheaper, but often cut corners to save on cost.
And you're going to hear the rest on the podcast. Welcome to Call Her NASA.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Call Her NASA podcast. My name is Nicole Riddle and I'm joined with my co-host Jonathan Bricker, and we have special guests Natalie and Mike.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. So just to get started, how do you feel about Jennifer Trosper wanting to receive funding for the ROVE? Can you tell me a little bit about the implications with this?
Yeah, absolutely. We think that Jennifer should absolutely ask for funding just because of the cost savings that would come with it. I mean, these project costs around $400,000 each compared to $5 million for the Phaeton program that we were talking about earlier. On the downside, of course, that means that sometimes employees will then cut corners that they normally wouldn't have to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's mostly an expense analysis for us. The bang for your buck we get is just pretty hard to pass. We know you have to cut some corners that otherwise you would in real projects, but that's something that we're going to have to focus on.
Awesome. I
course.
can totally see where you're coming from.
All right, guys, can you guys also expand on what's at stake here?
Yeah, so there's a lot at stake. We want to hire and retain the best. Career development is really important to us. This program will be a first start at kind of developing some of those key skills for the younger employees. Obviously, the older employees have a lot more experience. They know things that otherwise they wouldn't have learned through that process. So we really want to get people with the ball rolling, get them started, get some experience under their belt.
Great idea.
What do y'all have to say about the build to print mandate? Are there advantages, disadvantages? Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, the cost savings are like the biggest part of it. I mean, the cost savings for this project are about $1 billion, which is kind of, you can't really beat it. We want to keep the best employees there that are the most intelligent and know what they're doing the best. So definitely that.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. We're kind of trading off that. Do we want to save money versus do we want to keep the best engineers? Some of them could go to other programs like SpaceX, where they get to really start from scratch. So we don't want to kind of shy away from that either.
Great.
Can you guys talk about GPL's knowledge sharing culture?
Yeah, so it's really hard to transfer tacit knowledge, things that you learn just along the way. We do have a lot of databases. We have more than, I think it's 5 million files where we try to get people to store them. There are some problems with that. Some of it can be a little esoteric and hard to access. As you guys probably know, we're a little bit secretive with some of our information, so it's not always easy to share that. But we do have some ongoing projects, so we're working on that.
Yeah, one thing that we're struggling with is just the factor of the implicit knowledge. I mean, it's hard for the younger generation to come in and see what the older generation has been doing and how successful they have been, and then trying to do it themselves after just coming fresh out of school. It's hard to then actually do it versus just learning it.
Definitely hard to balance the two kind of, sides of it.
Right.
Yeah, we want to know the why. So you can see all the different processes, but why they made a decision, that's hard to actually get down.
Yeah.
Can you guys discuss another company dealing with knowledge management issues?
Yeah, so prior to my time at NASA, I worked at Regions Bank in Birmingham, Alabama for a few years. There were not a whole lot of knowledge bases that they had, not a whole lot of database files. People would keep them mostly for themselves. They weren't really interested in sharing those just because they'd worked hard to maintain them. Particularly with bank databases, they can be a little tricky to navigate. There are federal regulations. You guys probably know about the banking industry, kind of like our current industry. The company did have some trouble retaining young people because of that. There was not a whole lot of knowledge transfer down the chain, if you will. This is a large problem in a lot of different countries and a lot of companies recently, especially with the age dynamic there.
Yeah, and that goes back just to the implicit knowledge that we talked about, and like how they're kind of, the older generations almost gatekeeping what they're doing because they want to have that as something that's in their back pocket that they can kind of wheel and deal and try and go to a different company if that's their next goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's way better to build off knowledge and start from scratch every time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what are some ways to fix this problem?
Yeah, so at this particular company, Regions, I think they just need to start somewhere. At NASA, we do have a lot of databases we have built up. They don't have a ton of up-to-date databases with that kind of stuff. For new graduates, it's really hard to kind of get that impromptu knowledge. They're often kept private, kind of like I mentioned. They might hesitate at first, but I think one kind of interesting thing they could do is maybe have a competition. So who can host the most files where you get to learn new things about the company and things, kind of the why we talked about, and maybe reward them with a pizza party or some idea like that.
Great idea. Yeah.
That's great. Are there any knowledge management systems already in place?
Yeah, at this company, at Regions, there were some. Unfortunately, they were mostly related to compliance. That's kind of a government thing with banks. So there was a lot of training on what not to do, such as you can't share personal files, you can't dig into data that's not accessible to your team, but there wasn't a whole lot on what actually you should do, because there are parts of the job that you really need to understand what you're doing and why. So they really focused on with HR, kind of that compliance measure, but not so much the learning.
What are the ethical concerns within Regions?
Yeah, so there are a couple. It's personal bank data, so obviously you don't want everyone knowing what's in your account and what kind of transactions, and for legal reasons that's obviously a problem as well. There have been some obfuscation attempts to kind of hide some things like social security numbers, but those obviously are met with different things, so we have to construct how do we get to this data, how do we de-obfuscate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of relating this back to the NASA case, like it's pretty difficult because we don't necessarily always want to tell everybody all of the different information about every single different case, because sometimes we'll have some special like secret missions that not everybody needs to know about. And we don't necessarily want everybody to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds difficult.
Yeah.
So that leads me straight into my next question. Can you build off on how this connects to the NASA JPL case?
Absolutely, yeah. So the kind of problem of training younger generations doesn't change no matter where you go. The data may change, the type of industry may change, but this is a problem a lot of industries are seeing. With bank data, it's a little less niche. There are a lot more banks than there are space companies, but it's still a problem. You know, we're not designing rockets, but it's still a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that we've definitely seen, and just from those who I've talked to, it's just really hard when you graduate from college and you're kind of thrown into the workforce. You don't necessarily always get that hands-on that you need when you're just learning within your university, and it's really hard to then actually have to take what you've learned and apply it.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add, the cost of relearning is really expensive. So if someone has already figured something out, it saves us a lot of time.
Yeah, no one wants to have to pay money to get more coursework or more programs. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
What parts of information systems play in this?
Yeah, so it's a huge one. There has to be some sort of understanding of a baseline for certain softwares, how to use them, things like that. There needs to be a place to ask questions, and databases and information systems can be a great place to do that. There are several ways to solve it, and at NASA we have some pretty good knowledge management systems in place, but we got to get them better.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining in. We'll see you next week on Call Her NASA.
Thanks,
Hey,
guys.
guys.
Yeah.